Man, I appreciate your patience, man.
It's all good, man.
I think you already did the introduction, so I'm not gonna hold anybody up any longer with this. I'm gonna share my screen. But before I do that, I want to thank your audience for allowing me to do this part three. Um, and just to say that this particular series is something that I did several years ago with Onk and the Armin Ross Squad, pseudo killers, I think is what they call themselves now. But we touched on it, and the response back then really wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. Me and Onk, we got this kind of rivalry thing going. He more of a mainstream. He don't think conspiracies exist at all. Where where my mind works, I see all the conspiracies, right? I see them a mile away. So in that, and because we are friends now, we ain't, I ain't knocking the brother. I don't agree with a lot of stuff that he agrees with, or he advocates, so to speak. So it's a healthy conflict in a way that we really strive. I know I do, to keep it respectful, to keep it adult like, and hopefully we can get on this channel and do something together regarding kind of a debate on a subject matter that we can touch on later on if we have time. But the point is, I brought that up to say that this is an old topic, a topic that I've been dealing with for quite a few years. And in response to doing the video with Onk on his channel, Brother Onk, he brought on the head of the new Black Panther Party to kind of counter some of the stuff that I said. Now, the problem with that is, if you watch the last two presentations, you know that I don't even deal with the quote new Black Panther Party at all. I strictly deal with the Black Panther Party of Huey Newton, Bobby Seale, Eldridge Cleaver from the 1960s and early 70s. I don't even deal with the new Black Panther Party. So I just want to clear that up. And again, thank you, Shook, for giving me the opportunity, because this is an education, right? This is a subject matter that, like, I feel like I'm a lifetime student. I don't spend all my time studying the Black Panther Party. I'm not a expert exclusively on them. That's not what I do. But I love to do research. I love it so much, in fact, I got to figure out a way to do this full time like you, bro, because you know what I mean. It's really good, but we work, we got obligations, we got family, etc. But I really enjoy it, man. That's why I'm doing it here tonight, and I hope y'all get something out of it. So here we go. Any questions for me, Shook?
No, my brother, sounds good. And just to, I just want to add lib one thing.
Yeah,
Whatever I can do to assist you, brother, don't hesitate to ask.
man, I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
I'm saying it live.
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. All right, so let me do this here. I'm gonna check this other screen real quick just to make sure they all work. Let me see here. Mic and camera. All right, so this is the other one. All right, so this is, let me move my beverage. This is some of the books we're gonna be dealing with here. Drugs as Weapons Against Us. If you haven't seen this book, this is something good to have in your library. It's got like two chapters on Tupac alone with his murder, um, which I totally believe it was a conspiracy to kill him. We also going to talk about this book here and its author, Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. This is written by Tom O'Neill. In fact, I'm going to show a clip today. We might have time to touch on this book, which is Van Ward Churchill's book, the COINTELPRO papers. I know we're going to pull out a clip on this book here, uh, the FBI and Martin Luther King Jr. I know we won't have time for this, but I'm just showing it to you. This is the new book on Fred Hampton's assassination. Great movie, by the way, if you haven't seen that. And lastly, Subversive. This is the book written by Seth Rosenthal. Another great book about the 1960s, the riots, etc., and in particularly how the government dealt um, with the citizens of the United States during that time, particularly the Black Panther Party. So, all right, back to the right camera. Let me share my screen, and then we're gonna go into it here. Let's see here. share screen. There you go. All right. Yes, yes, yes. And I don't know how the sound quality is, bro. So let me know if everything is tight.
Awesome. Sounds good. And when you play any video, I'll let you know.
All right, good deal. Okay. So, we have thumbnails that we've used for this series. But just to recap, and I'm going to recap on the first probably 10 slides. I'm not going to go all the way into details like we did before because it's not necessary. You can go back and watch the videos that we've already done on it. So I'm not going to do that. But I'm going to recap real quick. So the term Judas Goat is a term that's got, it describes a psychological operation, right? You know anything about sheepdogs or goats in relationship to sheep and slaughter? Basically, what they do is they lead all the other sheep to slaughter, right? They're like a false prophet, so to speak. So that's that slide. The next slide, and there's got to be a quicker way other than clicking this, but I'm gonna go ahead and just click on it. Deals with the fact that the original Black Panther Party existed in Laws County, Alabama, and it was totally a political party, complete with candidates running for public office, and it was a counter, you see, as a counter to the Democratic Party. So of that time, it had everything to do with running candidates. As I indicated before, I think that with every story, there are three levels to a conspiracy. And I often use the analogy with 9/11 or the Kennedy assassination. There's the official story, which is typically what the government will run. Then there's a popular conspiracy theory, which I call the first level, and then there's the the real conspiracy, the third level, the underground to the underground people that promote a theory or look at an aspect of things a little deeper. And that's what I try to do with these subject matters. Everybody knows that the Black Panther Party was not liked by the government, but what you may not know is that the government uses this tactic often to create false organizations to lead people astray, so to speak. All right, I also used this slide before. We talked about it. Controlled opposition. What does that mean? Lenin has a favorite quote. Vladimir Lenin, and this also, for those that don't know, was the founder or the head of the revolution in the Soviet Union in the 1920s. And his policy or his saying in this quote is the best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves. Now, again, this man became the head of the government and its secret police, KGB, etc. But that's a very wide understood concept and tactic. Okay. More importantly, the best way to control obviously the opposition is to lead it. More importantly, the whole subject matter, the theme of what we're talking about is the Black Panther Party itself, created by Huey Newton, Bobby Seale, and others, was a false flag dragnet organization designed to pull the most radical elements of the Black community into them in order to trap them off, to kill them, to assassinate them, to imprison them, etc. All right. This is some more highlights of the original Black Panther Party out of Alabama, showing that they ran candidates. Stokely Carmichael was their head organizer. And then, these brothers were really in the South and really worried about armed conflict with the sheriff department, with the local law enforcement. And they were prepared to die. And they didn't need black leather jackets and black berets. It was a real fight. More articles related to that, also a flyer, their headquarters, and the whole aspect, if you will, of what really took place with this original Black Panther movement is in the studying the Lowndes County, Alabama freedom movement to really understand the history of the Black Panther, the symbol, the ideology, the concept. It had an origin that is not talked about in movies. This is the picture of the original members of the Black Panther Party under Huey Newton out of California. We discussed that earlier. This is some more pictures, provocative images, and this was really their debut. This was their introduction to the world when they actually stormed the Capitol in Sacramento, California, to express their rights and desire, as citizens, but as armed citizens, willing to take what they wanted by any means necessary. This had never been seen in the movement up until this point. It's very important that I point that out. That all the different organizations, even the Nation of Islam, even the radical Nation of Islam with Malcolm X and Louis Farrakhan and Muhammad Ali, they did not carry guns. And I can tell you that firsthand. I was a member of the FOI when I was a teenager in high school and my young adulthood. And one of the main tenements is that we don't carry so much as a knife as a FOI. So this idea of Black organization, Black people standing up in America with guns, armed, ready to go. Nah, bro, this was brand new. Remember this point, because when we get to the end of the presentation tonight, I want to show you something in FBI memos that totally contradict how they treated the Black Panthers in light of what I'm showing you on this slide. All right, carrying guns was this was their mantra. Okay. To follow the police around. I mean, y'all seen the movies. Pull somebody over, the cops pull somebody over, there'll be Black Panther standing there, cocking their weapons with the guns, with the police there, basically ready to go to war. Up until this point in the movement, this had never occurred before. So, all right, at the risk of not sounding, repeat myself, I'm gonna move on. Okay. All right. This is something that I want to show you, the media coverage. I think we covered this already. Yeah, this was actually, so I won't show this video again, but this was a video. I can show it and mute it at the same time, I think. This was a video when they actually stormed the Capitol. And we went over this. We watched the whole video and showed what happened when the brothers came in with the guns, how the head of the, I guess this had been the state police who was guarding the Capitol. His input again. Go watch part 2, and you'll see all the details of this and how this was just. I think we described it as some total fuckery, right? It was just too. Everybody was too relaxed. The response was too relaxed. Anyway, we dealt with Huey P. Newton, and dealing with this, we actually had a sister come on who was the great niece of Huey P. Newton. And she gave us some inside information that I really appreciate. And I'm happy that the sister interjected. I'm happy that she took this level of research that I'm bringing with the open mind. But more importantly, I learned some stuff from her that I didn't know. Again, this research is sort of a part-time thing for me. But at the same time, I care enough about it to do the research and to bring it to the people. And she was kind enough to come on the show and show her appreciation and to support the fact that a lot of the things that I was saying about Huey Newton and the Black Panthers was true and irrefutable. So I appreciate you, sis, if you're watching or if you will watch this video in the future. So I don't need to go through the fact that Huey Newton, basically was moving like a black man, should not be able to move in light of the fact that he had just recently, when he founded Black Panther, shortly after that, he was arrested for manslaughter, for killing, voluntary manslaughter, for killing a police officer, and then beating the case, and able to travel the world, so to speak, meet with the head of the Communist Party in China. At the time, we were in the middle of a Cold War, so it was really unprecedented. This, to me, speaks volumes of there was CIA and government involvement in the way that he was able to move. We also saw this video, which, you know what, I might actually play this video because this can kick it off to where I'm going to start next, in fact. So I'm going to let everybody hear this video of Huey Newton. It's a brief clip, but it kind of gives you some insight as to what his demeanor was and mentality was. And then we're going to go straight to some other clips. All right, so I'm going to show this. I'm going to cue it up. Let me know if the sound is good, bro, or if I need to adjust anything.
Former station chief of the CIA in Angola, said, well, I want to say this to you very clear. The Huey P. Newton that people see today is a direct result of operations run by the Central Intelligence Agency to ensure that he would turn out the way that he is.
Some people have a distorted view of me, And it gives me very much trouble. It adds to the sort of timid personality that I already have. It makes me uncomfortable because I know that I can't give them all of those things that their idol is supposed to. And I don't want to appear to them a fake, but I would just like to tell them that, you know, I'm just another regular human being.
Huey P. Newton was never the same. He eventually became Dr. Huey P. Newton, PhD. He eventually became a crackhead, and he eventually was assassinated in Oakland in 1989.
All right, so that's a good segue to say what I'm about to say now about Huey Newton. And I shared this with Suge earlier because his great niece kind of alluded to this. But it goes back, you know, to having a level of humility, right? All of us can learn something new. And when she brought this information to me, I did some more research on a particular aspect of Huey's life that I guess you could say I kind of overlooked. I knew that he got assassinated in Oakland. I knew that the speculation was that Huey was involved in drugs, and of course you're going to hear other people like Bobby Seale say that he was trying to take over the drug trade in Oakland towards the end of his life. I also knew that Huey P. Newton was someone who had a big ego. That's clearly, you can see that from the video. But what I didn't know was the details of his actual murder. And so I'm going to show you that right now, briefly. All right, so I wish I could put this up on the screen, but this is the book that I was telling you about earlier.
It's up good enough.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Written by John Potash, Drugs as Weapons Against Us. So when he deals in this particular chapter, let me find it. And I won't, if you can find the book to mark it, but he's got a whole chapter that kind of deals with Black Panthers and Huey Newton in particular, drugs and CIA targeting of Newton, the Shakurs, and other Panthers. So he goes into detail about the actual assassination of Huey P. Newton. And one of the things that stuck out with me, this is also, by the way, this is on page 270, and it goes to 271. I'm not going to read everything here, but I will tell you this. I'll try to summarize what basically happened. Essentially, like the sister said, Huey P. Newton was involved in the Black Panther Party from a positive perspective in this point of his life, later in his life. In fact, in 1988, he was incarcerated, and he refused, he being Huey P. Newton, and he refused to leave, the prison because his fellow Black Panther, Geronimo Pratt, who we talked about earlier, but they had some conflicts. But in this situation, by the end of Huey's life, they had kind of mended the fences, so to speak. So he refused to leave prison. Pratt basically told him, fellow Black Panther, still in prison for a murder he did not commit, told him, no, bro, you need to go out and you need to, basically fight not only for my release, but continue to struggle. Well, Huey Newton did leave, and this was August 22nd, 1988. Approximately 1 year to the day, he was assassinated on August 22nd, 1989. So remember, this whole incident with him and Geronimo Pratt happened in 1988 on August the 22nd. And then on August the 22nd, 1989, he was assassinated. Now, why is this important? There's a lot of speculation that people involved in covert activity, espionage with the government, that they leave, fingerprints, if you will. They have a signature for when they are involved in certain activity. And what's really distinct about this is that the same thing happened to, or a similar thing happened to Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. Martin Luther King did a speech about the Vietnam War. And it was on, he made that speech April 4th, 1967. And it was titled Beyond Vietnam, where he blasted the United States government for being the greatest purveyor of violence. That's actually a famous quote by Dr. King when he talks about that. Literally a year later, on the exact same day, April 4th, 1968, Dr. King was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee, on a balcony at the Lorraine Motel. And then there's other situations similar to this, where a year to the day, a person is, something that happens to him, like an assassination. And in this case with Huey Newton, he was actually shot once in the abdomen and 2 times in the head. That is an intelligence or a gangster mafia type of move. That person who shot Huey Newton on that day had one desire in mind, that's to make sure that he was dead. Most people involved in skirmishes and shootings and, you know what I'm saying, just overall violence activities, typically they don't have that kind of precision when it comes to murder or just violence in general. But in this case, Huey Newton was definitely, in my opinion, assassinated. And it is a signature not only of the military, but like I said, the mafia. And in this particular case, one of the witnesses to his murder, Michelle Johnson, she gave the description that Huey was being forced into an automobile by somebody who she didn't know because they were yelling and arguing with each other. And then when he refused to get in the car, that's when the shots rang out. And as you know, the rest, he was dead. So, I'll say this. At any point in anybody's life, I guess we all have the ability to change. That goes without saying, right? That's without a doubt. So I don't know his mindset 100%, but based on the way that he was executed, I would have to agree with his great niece in saying that Huey was getting back to the way he was in terms of the movement, and he became a threat once again to the establishment. I think the first time that he was a threat, they literally MK Ultra'd him, right? MK Ultra is a psychological program that was developed by the United States government in the 1940s, but it affected many people, which we're going to discuss right now. I have a video clip, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this, bro, but it's from JRE, the Joe Rogan show. There's a few clips in here from this book here that we talked about earlier, Chaos, right? The story of Charles Manson and the CIA. Have you heard of this before, bro?
Nope, never heard of it.
This is going to be real eye-opening, man. I mean, it's a heavy book, and it's a great interview that he does. I'm not going to play the whole interview because I believe it's like 24 minutes, but I am going to show clips. And so to kind of wrap all of this up, remember what we talked about in part 1 and part 2, and what we talked about tonight in relationship to the government infiltrating organizations, manipulating people, and then taking over those organizations for their own purpose. That's what we're dealing with tonight. All right. So the first clip I'm about to show you in this video is clip 157. So I'm going to go ahead and go right to that. But you know what? Before I do that, let me give you the introduction. Let me give you the introduction, then I'm going to skip to that clip, and I'm going to go through here. So if it's frustrating for y'all, I do apologize, but I don't want to spend this show watching somebody else's show. I just need to show you some excerpts. You can find it on YouTube, right? And it's JRE episode 1459, Tom O'Neill, author of Chaos. So here we go. I'm about to pull it up now.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
What I would do is I would seduce people into this story and get them as
How would you
obsessed
do
as
that?
I was.
Like, pretend I'm a guy and you're trying to pitch me this book.
In the beginning, in the first years, just the trial that had occurred, that had been prosecuted by Vincent Bugliosi, had a lot of
I'm sorry. Now we're going to go straight to 57. 50, yeah, 57.
And essentially, what I'm getting so far, I haven't finished the book, but what I'm getting so far is there was some sort of a CIA program where they were, explain how they did it. They infiltrated these hippie communities, and they allowed Charles Manson over and over and over again to get out of jail.
Yeah.
They knew that he was committing all these crimes, and instead of
Well, we have to
incarcerating
be careful
him,
when we say they.
who's they?
Yeah, we have to
Okay,
kind of break it all down.
let's break it all down.
One of the other things I found out that was very significant was that Manson had a parole officer, his first parole officer, who kind of had given him a get out of jail free card for the first year after Manson was released from prison in
This was Smith?
Roger Smith, yeah. And he was a criminologist in the Bay Area. Manson violated his parole the day that he was released in Los Angeles. And this is one of the, you think it's a little lie, but it's an important lie that Vince Bugliosi presented, not just at trial, but also in his book. At trial, it's much more serious. He changed the narrative. He said Manson had been given permission to travel to San Francisco from LA.
All right, so here's the significance. Let me tie it to the video, the previous video and tonight's video and the subject matter. Huey P. Newton, after committing voluntary manslaughter of Officer Frey and then shooting another cop, was able to get 2 convictions overturned. And then he beat the case altogether, right? He gets the ability, passport or what have you, to actually travel the country or travel the world, so to speak, obviously the country, but his movements are free. It's not something that is considered, how can I say this? In 1970, this wouldn't be an ordinary thing, right? For a black man to have convictions overturned for murdering a police officer and then having the ability to secure a passport to go meet with the second most powerful communist leader on the planet, Mao Zedong, in China. He preceded President Nixon, who didn't go until 1971. So think about it. In addition to that, Huey Newton also had a situation where he was involved with the murder later on of a teenager who was a prostitute. And they had evidence against him, but he beat the case. Again, like Charles Manson, he was able just to maneuver like he had a guardian angel somewhere protecting all of his moves. To me, that's a telltale sign that there's some bigger entities involved. So let's continue. The next clip is going to be clip 1030. Let's see here. Here we go.
And chaos. And the law enforcement in Los Angeles and San Francisco at the time. So MK Ultra began in the federal prisons experiments on prisoners. Famously or notoriously, Whitey Bulger, I don't know if you've heard about this, but a few years ago, it was revealed that Whitey Bulger had been a part of MK Ultra experimentation in the 50s when he was incarcerated. And after he was convicted, he was claiming that he believed that all of his violence was a product of what had happened to him in prison when he was experimented upon with LSD through these signs.
It's important to point out who Whitey Bulger was for most people for some people who may not know. Whitey Bulger is actually an Irish gangster out of Boston. He got convicted for, I think, murder and conspiracy and a whole lot of other stuff in the early 2000s. But he basically ran the Boston mob, the Irish mob, which does exist, particularly in Boston, for decades. And he ran it with impunity. And he had relationships with the FBI and other government officials. And he was able to maneuver and kill people with no retribution, with no accountability. Again, this is another telltale sign. And here's Whitey Bulger, who's on the record of saying, look, when I was in prison, they did some stuff to me too. So this MK Ultra thing is deep. That's the part I wanted to show. And that went into clip 11. Now we're going to go to clip 1525. The CIA paid students to infiltrate gangs. Where have you heard this before, right? We talked about this a little bit. So let me pull that up. right here.
They would just let him go.
Yeah, and Smith. I mean, to give you a little background on Smith, as he told me, he called himself. He goes, "I was a rock rib Republican from the Midwest, and I came out." He went to Berkeley, to the School of Criminology to become a criminologist. I think in '65 or '66, he was getting his master's and his PhD, and his special area of study was in the beginning gangs, collective behavior, and violence, and then how drugs would make some of these gangs that he had people he was working with students infiltrate to get information. Yeah, this was in Oakland in the ghettos in like '65, '66 when the Panthers were forming. Then in late '66, he decided to become a federal parole officer while he was still writing his dissertation. And he got assigned to something called the San Francisco Project, which was an experimental program run by the federal government to see how different numbers of parole clients.
All right, so without going too much into that, you notice he talked about drugs basically being a weapon, exactly what John Potash talked about in his book. All right, it's chemical and biological warfare. We know that the CIA flooded California first and then the nation with crack cocaine to fund the Iran-Contra conspiracy or Iran-Contra war. Basically, it was an operation where they took drugs from Central America, shipped it to the United States, California particularly, processed it into crack cocaine, sold it, took the resources or the money for the drugs, because I'm sure they gave it all to them on consignment, right? Took that money back to I think it was Iran. No, Israel actually. This is a fact that's not really known in history either concerning the Iran-Contra affair. You got to dig deep. But it was the Israelis who gave the weapons to the Iranians, and then some of those weapons went back to the Contras to fight that war that was not funded by Congress. So you got a lot of international entities involved in the destruction, not just of Black people, but of all people of color around the world, in my opinion. But in this particular instance, drugs were used as a tool to control gangs. And here's a guy talking about the early days of the program when they wrote it out in the 60s. And what did he say? The Black Panthers, particularly, but gangs. And remember, in part one, we talked about, I believe personally, and I think this wholeheartedly and sincerely, that the United States was looking at all the gangs around the country and all the major cities, and they decided to set up their own gang, the Black Panthers, to attract all of these so-called gang members, which they really not gang members. If you know anything about gangs and gang culture, it really becomes a second family for those of us who never had a family. Another topic, another day. But they take that aggression and they parlayed it into something negative, and I believe created the Black Panther Party as a dragnet for all of these aggressive Black men and women around the country to get involved in, so that they can literally pick them off one by one once they became the leaders that they were naturally born to be. All right, so let's keep going. All right, last clip from this video, frame 21. Here we go.
That's how they got arrested that time.
Yeah, that was.
And still they got released.
Yeah.
Which is really crazy. It's like there's so many of these instances where Charlie or members of the family were arrested, and then it seemed like the police officers who were holding them were being told, "Hey, you got to let these guys go.
Yeah.
This is a higher situation, is above your pay grade."
Yeah. Well, a real turning point in my reporting was after I got access to Manson's parole file and saw that, I mean, in Heller-Skelter Bugliosi, I think, describes 2 arrests that Manson got released on technicalities, shoddy police work or something, when he should have been violated. But what he didn't do was talk about 3 or 4 more. And if you've gotten up to chapter 10, you've seen all that stuff laid out.
All right, so I won't go into that anymore because we got more to cover. But you get a chance, look up the Manson murders, pick up Tom O'Neill's book, or just watch these clips from his interview with Joe Rogan. Uncle Suge, you got anything you want to chime in on, bro?
No, brother.
All
Cook.
right. What'd you say?
I said you cooking, brother. You cooking.
All right, here we go. Next slide. We covered this, but it's important to bring this back up again, okay? Black Panther Party leadership, chemical warfare, mind control operations, but more importantly, psychological profiles. I don't know if you want me to show this clip again, because I know we going into that hour, but I want to show this particular clip that I didn't show from last time. So, Sugar, if you want me to show the one from The Wire, where they break down what a psychological profile is, I'll do that. Just let me know, but I'm definitely going to show this one right now. So this has to do with the mentality of the Black Panther Party and how things were going down.
The FBI is considering an attempt to try to smash the Black Panther Party. They stopped actually attacking us. Didn't mean they didn't have no covert crap going on.
Infiltration of cocaine into the Black Panther Party, its leadership, Huey P. Newton being the main target.
And every once in a while I say, why are you snorting this cocaine? This ain't the thing. Now, I don't say this because I'm trying to destroy Huey's character. What I'm trying to tell people is you have to learn to know the whole truth.
I had a clear impression that chemical warfare would be utilized against the Black Panther Party. We had taken a position in our rules against anyone shooting heroin and narcotics found to be immediately dismissed from the Black Panther Party because we essentially were anti-drug in our operations. I'd say in my analysis and reflection and research that there were mind control operations run against the Black Panther Party, as well as a lot of other operations, psychological warfare programs. And when I say chemical warfare, I'm talking about chemical substances like alcohol and cocaine.
MKUltra was what you might call a research program by the CIA to determine if psychotropic drugs, mind-altering drugs, might be used for intelligence purposes, either for chemical warfare, for the interrogation of intelligence assets, or the neutralization of targets.
See, you have to remember, if you read some of the COINTELPRO documents, they had a psychological profile on Huey, on me, on Eldridge. They knew they could use Huey, and they knew that they could trick Eldridge into a certain level of thinking. So, they had developed this over a period of time. Now, here we got a situation where you got some party members that talk to me that they believe Huey got duped in to, on a small scale level, methodologically destroying the party.
And the party basically went from a people's organization to Huey's private army. That's basically what happened.
It was agreed that I would run for mayor of Oakland. And then Huey insisted that Elaine Brown had to run for city councilwoman at large. We lose the goddamn campaign. And then I found out late May 1974, that Huey was trying to take over the drug trade in Oakland, California. So I say, Huey, the party is over.
All right, so let me go right into this next video with psychological operations or psychological profile. And again, this is from a movie clip, or pardon me, a show clip of The Wire. But it always stuck with me when I saw this particular clip, and I think it is definitely, valid in this discussion. So here we go. This is a clip from The Wire.
So what we conclude from a behavioral analysis of the known forensics is the following. The suspect is likely a white male in his late 20s to late 30s. He likely is not a college graduate, but feels nonetheless superior to those with advanced education. And he is likely employed in a bureaucratic entity, possibly civil service or quasi-public service, from which he feels alienated. He has a problem with authority and a deep-seated resentment of those who he feels have impeded his progress professionally. The minimized sexual activity suggests that this is not a primary motive for the killings. In fact, the bite marks on the last found victim, lacking the DNA and saliva, indicate to us possible post-mortem staging. The suspect has trouble with lasting relationships and is possibly a high-functioning alcoholic. with alcohol being utilized as a trigger in the commission of these crimes. His resentment of the homeless may stem from a personal relationship with someone who was in that cohort, or his victimization of vagrants might merely present an opportunity for him to assert his superiority and intellectual prowess. If you get more, fax it down and we can update the profile.
Thanks, sir. Thanks. So, what do you think? They're in the ballpark.
I always thought that was a very good scene, as I said earlier, from that movie, because it just shows that when the government is targeting someone, they have capacities, capabilities. They use psychology. They use a deep level of understanding the individual long before, they capture somebody that they're looking for. They kind of knew, and they did that in the 70s, in the 60s and 70s with people like Huey Newton, Eldridge Cleaver, and other Black leaders. They knew their profiles and what they were about. All right, here's another Black Panther leader, Eldridge Cleaver. Let me see if I can try this real quick. So Eldridge Cleaver, he was actually, Eldridge Cleaver was a Black Panther leader. At the age of 18, he was convicted of a felony drug charge. And basically what happened to him was he had a similar situation in terms of being released. Now, if you remember, Bobby Seale said they knew that they could manipulate Huey Newton. They knew they could manipulate Eldridge. Eldridge is very interesting because after he got out of prison, he managed to get a job with Ramparts magazine. Ramparts magazine, if you do any research, you'll find was another organization or another group that was targeted by the FBI and CIA in the 60s because it was considered a radical publication. So he got this, this writing job. And I'm not saying that a Black man couldn't get a job in 1968 or 66 as a writer. That's not my point. The point is how he was able to get out of prison and then immediately parlayed his position. And then shortly after that, joined the Black Panther Party and became a leader in the party.
Right.
Now, here's where things get real sticky. Did you have something you wanted to say, Shug?
Yeah, man. Am I reading this correctly? He was convicted of rape.
That's right. That's right.
And assault.
That's right.
With intent to murder.
That's right. That's right.
Continue, brother.
Well, the last bullet is, to me, the most important one, which is rarely discussed. In addition to his profile, like you mentioned, is after being charged with murder, he fled the country. He jumped bail. He went to Cuba. When he was in Cuba, he was treated like a king. But Castro said, no, we got to get rid of this dude, and kicked him out of the country. That's how he ended up in Algiers, because Castro and his intelligence organization said the Black Panther Party have been infiltrated by the CIA. Now, you got to understand who Castro was during this time. The United States has attempted to assassinate Castro so many times that it's comical. Bombs and cigars, prostitutes. Anybody know anything about history know about Castro and his relationship with the U.S. government. If Castro don't want you, if Castro calls you the police, I'm kind of believing that you are the police in this regard. So anyway, just trying to keep it light, trying to keep it comical. He was kicked out of Cuba for being suspected to be connected to the Central Intelligence Agency. He was obviously married to Kathleen Cleaver, which you're going to see a clip with her later, who became a very prominent Black Panther leader. There's only one of the sisters that I deal with, but essentially all of the prominent Black women in the Black Panther Party became, later on, they remained prominent, including Angela Davis, Elaine Brown, and Kathleen Cleaver. But we're going to deal with Elaine Brown in a second. So here we go. Next slide. Bobby Seale, he's really, there's not a whole lot of meat there. I will say this about Bobby Seale, like a lot of the other Black Panthers, there's a continued theme. A lot of them that did not wind up either assassinated or in prison, who were in leadership, became PhDs, professors, people in academia, people with resources. And it really makes you wonder, like, and even Huey Newton, who later got his PhD. Am I saying that these black people couldn't have been intelligent and there's a common theme of them just being bright, that could not happen? No, I'm not suggesting that. What I am asking you to look at is the contrast between the two worlds. You have a list of Black Panther leaders who are literally the enemy of the state. Every single tactic you can name, the government has used to destroy them. We're going to talk about H. Rat Brown, who later became Abdul Alameen, right here in Atlanta, and what they did to him and how he was railroaded. But the contrast between them and Geronimo Pratt is like night and day. But we'll deal with that. Anyway, Bobby Seale eventually ran in 1973 for mayor of Oakland. He came in second place. He lost against an incumbent. Again, not a whole lot of meat there. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on Bobby Seale. Not that he's not an interesting character, because there may be some information that we revealed later on. But I will say this, which is kind of comical. He does talk a lot about the Black Panther Party. He does know a lot of the history. There's no question. But in addition to moving on to get his PhD, he also had a barbecue sauce. He was famous for selling ribs. So from revolutionary to rib dealer, you know what I'm saying? So this is something to say. Ain't nothing wrong with. I love ribs, so you know, if they cook right, ain't nothing wrong with that. But I'm gonna let you hear a clip real quick from Bobby Seale, and then we're gonna go on to somebody really interesting in terms of the theme of tonight, which was that this was a false flag government-controlled organization. So here we go, Bobby Seale.
Bobby Seale, a clarion call of the Black Panther Party was power to the people. You spent certainly virtually all of your life trying to give people in the community more power and control over their lives. In the 30 years since you started the Panther Party, how much improvement have you seen in members of the Black community's ability to take control over their own lives?
To put this in context, you know, when we came about, we were sort of in what we call the second phase of the civil rights struggle. It's a hindsight analysis. We were about not only the Black Panther Party snaking its attempt in the South, trying to evolve political electoral Black community unity. There was a time when there was only, 400 maybe or so duly elected Black politicians. I mean, from the federal all the way down to the Board of Education level. What we see that came out of that 60s protest movement was at the end of the 70s, we're talking about 6,000 or 7,000 duly elected Black politicians. At the end of the 80s, 10,000 duly elected politicians. The problem is that it was only half a victory because hypothetically 50% of the politicians ain't worth crap, even the Black ones, right? Probably 70-80% of the white ones are not worth crap either. My point is that was the second phase. The main thing, though, was how do we get to the economics? How do we evolve a new economic practice that makes some human sense? And that is the area, you see. Now, we can talk about and measure from the 60s with the current report when they spoke of what 2, 3, 4% Blacks were. Property owner, class, etc. And if we measure with the basic medium income and the levels of discriminations and lack of fair access, fair shares access to education, what have you, and jobs, at the time, well, there's been some changes. On the other end, we can look at Black America particularly, and we can see 25% of that.
So this particular video interview is not really interesting or really related at much to the subject matter, other than the fact that, again, Bobby Seale was indeed the co-founder of the Black Panther Party, the chairman under Huey Newton. All right, so here we go. This is the guy that Kenya was talking about, man. Because this whole situation with this guy here, Richard Aoki, is so deep. Basically, Richard Aoki was a friend of Huey Newton and Bobby Seale in college. He grew up in Berkeley. And the story goes and this is the mainstream story because it's actually a documentary about Richard Aoki. The story goes is that he was just he's of Asian descent, but he was born in California like everybody else, going through the struggles of being a minority in the Bay Area, dealing with the police, dealing with discrimination. And the story is, with terms of Richard Aoki, he was the guy that literally gave all the Black Panthers their weapons in the West Coast. He armed the Black Panther Party. He was the guy that provided them with military training and the military arms to do so. What is distinct about him is that in 2012, this book was written and articles and discoveries were made that Richard Aoki was in fact an FBI intelligence agent, that he worked for the government, ex-military guy who becomes an intelligence agent and informant, and he was at the higher echelon of the Black Panther Party at its height. We're going to talk later about counterintelligence, but counterintelligence and people who are agent provocateurs, when you really understand what that term means, to be an agent provocateur means, okay, you working for the government, you got ill means, you want to bring down this organization for whatever reason. You go into that group, kind of like the character in the movie, what is it, about Fred Hampton, the Black Messiah, Judas and the Black Messiah, where the informant literally goes in and makes proposals on how they should do certain criminal acts, and then steps away, and then the government boys come in and bam, and everybody get arrested, go to jail, or get murdered. So Richard Aoki is indeed a character. I'm going to show you a video, 2 videos are about him. One, favorable, but it gives you some insight onto how deeply connected he was. The second, not favorable at all. It's from the National Public Radio broadcast, and it breaks down Richard Aoki. The second video is 10 minutes, bro. The first video was 1 minute. Did you want to say anything real quick before we show that or no?
No, brother.
All right, here we go. Richard Aoki.
He was a friend of Huey Newton. There wasn't an organization that he becomes a member of. It's an organization that he helps get started. This is what people now, they see Black Panthers after the fact that they've already had an organization. But when I came to California and met the Black Panthers, it was just a very small community group. For Richard, it wasn't even a group. It was his friends that he worked with. And so it gave rise. These are the people who have created the organization. There's a huge difference in creating an organization and joining the organization. So what you should say is, why would he want to stimulate this kind of organization? What is he sees what he'd seen in his life, people being subjected to unfair, racist domination by the state, and that's wrong, and he knew it was wrong, and so he was quite willing to help his friends fight against this.
All right, that's important to point out. He helped create the Black Panther Party, which is something that we've discussed in previous episodes and we've kind of touched on tonight. He wasn't just somebody that infiltrated it, he helped create it. Here's the next video.
Why he wasn't in that picture?
What video? What picture?
With the old Black Panthers. I don't see him in that picture though.
Yeah, that's true. I can't answer that question. I don't know why he wasn't in that picture. But
who was that woman that was just talking? Who is she?
That was Kathleen Cleaver. Remember, I showed you an earlier picture of her, and that
was the guy's wife.
Yeah, that was Elvis Cleaver's wife right here.
Oh, I didn't know that was her. Okay.
Yeah, that's her right there. She's still an activist, still involved, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? All of them are. Yep.
Interesting.
So here we go. This is the next video, and I think it's now this is the longer one. So if you want me to stop halfway through, I will. But it's a deep video. I'm not going to show the whole 20 minutes. I'm only going to show the first 10. If anybody wants to look it up, They can simply look up Richard Aoki, National Public Radio. All right, here we go.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.
I misspoke. Democracy Now! I keep saying NPR. My bad.
We begin today's show with explosive new allegations that the man who gave the Black Panther Party some of its first firearms and weapons training was an undercover FBI informant in California. Richard Aoki was an early member of the Panthers and the only Asian American to have a formal position in the party. He was also a member of the Asian American Political Alliance that was involved in the Third World Liberation Front student strike. But the claim that Aoki was informed on his colleagues is based on statements made by a former agent of the FBI in a report obtained by investigative journalist Seth Rosenfeld, author of the new book, Subversives, the FBI's War on Student Radicals and Reagan's Rise to Power. Over the last 30 years, Rosenfeld sued the FBI 5 times to obtain confidential records. He eventually compelled the agency to release more than 250,000 pages from their files. In this video, produced by the Center for Investigative Reporting, Rosenfeld explains how he first stumbled across information about Richard Aoki.
A former FBI agent had heard that I was doing research, then he contacted me. His name was Bernie Threadgill. And he says, hey, I know that guy. And he said, Aoki was my informant. I developed him.
Oh, yeah, he was a character. He said, I don't have any interest in communism. And I said, well, why don't you just go to some of the meetings and tell me who's there and what they talk about. So one thing led to another, and we became a real good informant.
Seth Rosenfeld reports that Aoki may have been covertly filing reports on a wide range of Bay Area political groups, according to the bureau agent who recruited him. He interviewed Aoki twice in 2007 about those allegations. Here's a clip from their phone conversations, which was recorded with Aoki's permission. After you hear Rosenfeld and Aoki, you will hear a comment from former FBI agent Wesley Swearingen.
I'm wondering if you remember a guy named Bernie Threadgill?
Bernie Threadgill?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
What I was told in my research that during this period of time you actually worked for the FBI.
They tell you that?
Bernie told me that.
He did?
He did.
Oh, that's interesting.
Informants were used when I was in the FBI. An informant would report on the inner workings of an organization. They can keep you up to date on the thinking of the leadership of the organization, whether it's going this way, that way. Someone like Aoki is perfect to be in the Black Panther Party, because I understand he's Japanese. Hey, nobody's going to guess. He's in the Black Panther Party. Nobody's going to guess that he might be an informant.
That was former FBI agent Wesley Swearingen speaking to reporter Seth Rosenfeld. Many of Richard Aoki's friends and colleagues have expressed shock and disbelief about the claim. We'll talk more about this debate in a minute, but first I want to play one more excerpt from Seth Rosenfeld's interview with Aoki in 2007.
Am I wrong?
I think you are.
Yeah. So, would you say it's untrue that you ever worked with the FBI or got paid by the FBI?
I would say.
Yeah. And I'm trying to understand the complexities about it, and I think
it is complex.
I believe it is. And
layer upon layer.
Richard Aoki speaking in 2007, 2 years before he committed suicide. Well, for more about these revelations and what they may mean, we're joined by 2 guests. In San Francisco, Seth Rosenfeld is with us, author of Subversives, the FBI's War on Student Radicals and Reagan's Rise to Power. The 734-page book was released Tuesday and took 3 decades to complete. Rosenfeld's was a reporter for the San Francisco Examiner and San Francisco Chronicle for almost 25 years, a winner of the George Polk Award. We'll discuss the rest of his book later. But right now, we're also joined from Santa Barbara, California, by Diane Fugino, Aoki's biographer and a professor and chair of the Department of Asian American Studies at the University of California, Santa Barbara.
Again, for the sake of time, we're going to keep going. Please go back and look at that interview on Democracy Now! with Richard Aoki. So, bro, what you think about that, Shug? Are you there? All right, don't worry about it. I'm going to continue with the next slide. This particular individual who I'm going to talk about next is very, very interesting, Miss Elaine Brown. All right, so Miss Elaine Brown, like Aoki, some have speculated was actually an informant. She had a lot of activity that just was suspicious. I mean, that's the best word to describe her. This is not just me saying this, but you're going to hear some other Black Panther members say this as well. When she actually came to California, when she arrived there, she stayed with a guy named Richard Kennedy. And Richard Kennedy was later revealed to also be a CIA informant. And he encouraged her to literally join the Black Panther Party. Richard Kennedy is a white guy, an old white man, by the way. Not saying anything is wrong with being involved with an old white man. I don't have anything against interracial relationships. I'm not in one, but I'm just saying, hey, that's what it was. So she had this affair with this guy as a young woman, with an older white man who was affiliated with the CIA. She later becomes radicalized, joins the Black Panther Party, and basically had the ear of Huey Newton, so much so that she was looked upon as somebody who was like second in command. It's a lot of folks that got beef, if you will, with Elaine Brown for various reasons, including what happened to Geronimo Pratt. She was heavily involved in getting him out of the party, out of leadership in the absence of Huey. And then ultimately, Geronimo Pratt was falsely convicted of murder, of a crime he could not have committed, and then later exonerated. And I think they paid him like $4.5 million, Geronimo Pratt, after he was exonerated. But what you think about Richard Aoki, Shook? You still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I mean, interesting. I ain't just watched it. Just I ain't put no thought into it, but that was some interesting info.
Yeah, it's deep, man.
Yeah,
and he is really the one of the few that it has been completely revealed about his position in terms of being an informant. And the fact of the matter is, the man committed suicide at 70. Sci-Fi says, she believes that they took him out. Maybe, they could have killed him. But nevertheless, his death was indeed suspicious to be exposed like that at the age of 70, and then die not too long afterwards. So it's very very interesting. So anyway, back to Elaine Brown. Here we go. I want to show you a clip. Oh, by the way, she actually accompanied Huey Newton when he went to China to visit with the communist leadership. Elaine Brown was by his side. Again, very suspicious character. So we're going to talk about Elaine Brown. Here we go. Next video.
But if I could get a virtuous woman,
who's the boss? Well, in a human society, there aren't really any boss.
Sorry about that.
Who's the boss? Well, in a human society, there aren't really any bosses, but who is the real leader and who is the person who's words are most meaningful to the party as a whole. There isn't any question about it. I mean, it always, that Huey is that person.
I had the distinct impression consistently from 1971 that Missy Lane Brown was a highly placed intelligence operative inside the Black Panther Party.
I think Elaine Brown came in through Earl Anthony, and she followed the same course of devious type of activities. So I'm saying all this to say that they got involved with people and caused a lot of problems, but we was aware of it. We just wasn't aware of the extent that the LAPD, the federal government with its COINTEL, CIA, FBI, we wasn't aware to the extent that these people were involved.
She acknowledges in her own words, in her book, Taste of Power, that in fact, she had been educated, groomed, taught at the hands of a longtime Central Intelligence Agency operative, J. Richard Kennedy, who anyone can find out about in David Garrow's book, The FBI and Dr. Martin Luther King.
So many party members literally have told me they believe this, that this woman was connected some kind of way and got step by step, piece by piece, got Huey hooked over into some notion that he could get more money behind the scene if he step by step methodologically devised the Black Panther Party.
So that's Elaine Brown. Little brief understanding of her background. But again, all these people like Elaine Brown, you can see pictures of them when they get older. They're literally, prominent, respected Black leaders. I believe she ran for president as a Green Party candidate. Bobby Seale, still active professor. Eldridge, not Eldridge Cleaver, but yeah, Eldridge Cleaver. He actually ran for senator in California. Joined the Republican Party. Many others, Kathleen Cleaver, Angela Day. All these people have lived great lives in spite of the fact that they were supposed to be a part of a organization that was hated by the government. But there's another group of Black Panthers that didn't have it so lucky, if you want to call it that. These were the individuals who I described as the real leaders getting sucked into the dragnet. Now, I could really talk about this in detail and add on to the list of people I'm going to discuss tonight, like Fred Hampton, who just had a movie after all these years. Bunchy Carter, Bunchy Carter. What was the other guy's name? There's a lot of people that have been involved, obviously Geronimo Pratt, that didn't get the justice that they deserved. One particular person is H. Rap Brown. H. Rap Brown, Black Panther leader, now his formerly H. Rap Brown, his name is Jamal Abdullah Alameen, formerly known as H. Rap Brown. All right, so he was also chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in the 1960s. And then for a 6 months period, he was the Black Panther Party Minister of Justice. Now here's the interesting thing about Brown. Being actively involved in both organizations and being from the South, he was like, the original Black Panther Party in that he was in the heart of the civil rights struggle in the South related to voting rights. I can go into detail about his life and the situation surrounding it, but for the sake of time, let me just say this. There was a memo after several controversial speeches that he gave, being a leader in the Black Panther Party, not pulling any punches. I'm going to show you a video on him in a second. But there was a memo that came out in 1967 that called for the neutralization of H. Rap Brown. And he became a prime target, specifically in the COINTELPRO documents, which we will go over later. But H. Rap Brown literally was railroaded initially in the 1960s for a shooting charge of a police officer, and he was railroaded recently in the 2000s, and he's in prison right now for allegedly killing a police officer here in Atlanta, Fulton County Sheriff Deputy.
Wow.
Here's a video of H. Rap Brown, and we'll deal with this more in a second. Here's a video from his youth.
Lyndon Johnson, he can always raise an argument about law and order because he never talks about justice. But black people fall for that same argument, and they go around talking about lawbreakers. We did not make the laws in this country. We are neither morally nor legally confined to those laws. Those laws that keep them up keep us down. You got to begin to understand that. For 400 years, he taught you white nationalism, and you left it up. You taught it to your children. You had your children thinking that everything black was bad. Black cows don't give good milk. Black hens don't lay eggs. Black for funerals, white for weddings. That's white nationalism. Santa Claus. A white honky who slides down a black chimney and comes out white. We tend to equate progress with concessions. We can no longer make that mistake. You see, when they gave us that nigger astronaut, you say we were making progress, but I told you they were going to lose him in space. He didn't get that far. You put Adam Clayton Powell in office and you couldn't keep him. What you think they're going to do with Thurgood Marshall when they get tired of him? They gave you Walter Washington of Washington, D.C., and you said we were making progress. That's not progress. See, it's no in-between. You're either free or you're a slave. There's no such thing as second-class citizenship. That's like telling me you can be a little bit pregnant.
These are the brothers that they feared, man, and they existed outside of the Black Panther Party. So now I hope it's becoming clear to people on what's happening. The government is seeing all these individuals who are like, H. Rap Brown, and they got to figure out a way to control them, to corral them. And I think that's exactly what they did. Remember, I put this image up here because I want people to know in that period, if you've seen the movie, The Western, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, you're familiar with it. I think it has Clint Eastwood in it or something. But anyway, Dr. King was considered good. Stokely Carmichael was considered bad. But H. Rap Brown, they considered that nigga ugly because he was stone cold raw. He didn't pull no punches and he didn't hold nothing back. And I believe the government never forgave him for that. And they had a vendetta that goes back to the 60s. Even after he spent time in Attica for a crime he did not commit. He was later brought up on chumped up charges in an incident that happened right here in Atlanta. So when he got out of prison, he comes to Atlanta, he sets up shop. He obviously became a Muslim in prison, as you can see from his garb, changed his name. And on the west end of Atlanta, which was a very bad drug-infested neighborhood at the time, he became a prominent imam and literally cleaned up this area of town. Well, apparently there was a situation where an arrest warrant was being served on him for speeding, and they said he impersonated a police officer. I find it hard to think that, in 2000 that he could impersonate a police officer, but whatever. So they get to his house. He's not there. The police, they're driving down the street and they see this black Mercedes. They confront the person driving the vehicle, thinking it's Jamal Abdullah Amin, H. Rap Brown, and there's a shootout. Whoever's driving the car starts shooting the police. And in the midst of this, you can see from the writing here that I have on the screen, one of the officers is shot, and then the other one is murdered or killed in the process. And then H. Rap Brown is convicted of their murder. Now, what I don't have to scream, and I want you to actually look this up because I forgot to put it on here. Very important point is that like 3 years later, there was a guy that came forward and confessed to the crime, that he was in fact the driver of the Mercedes-Benz and shot the police officer. But now H. Rap Brown is sitting in prison, life in prison, without the possibility of parole, right here in the state of Georgia. I believe for his attitude in the 60s. They literally did not stop until they got him. And it really pisses me off because when I see these other Black Panther leaders, who in my opinion were either agents of the government, informants of the government, or just complicit in the downfall of real leadership like him, it makes me mad to think that these brothers were set up, because you can tell from the very beginning he literally cared sincerely about the condition of Black people in this country, even to the point where he became an old man and, like I said, cleaned up the neighborhood in the West End. So it's a sad state of affairs. All right, let's keep going. Brother, did you want to say something about H. Rap Brown?
Nah, brother, man, I see how they had them shades on him on his wanted poster. That was kind of cool, you know?
Yeah, I mean, they don't stop, you know? They don't stop, man.
He got his sunglasses on, you know?
Yeah, they don't stop.
Yeah,
so anyway,
man,
this is
deep, though.
This is the end of the presentation. I want to show y'all some documents and just
damn, man, I thought that was Unc.
Yeah, right. That's Geronimo Pratt.
Yeah, motherfucker.
So, he looked like Unc, right?
For a little minute, yeah, he did, man.
I won't have time to cover him, or like I said, Fred Hampton tonight, because it's just not enough time. I intend on doing a documentary like I did on Dr. King, specifically on this. It's probably going to take me at least 2-3 hours. And if you have not subscribed to my channel, go to the Scott Report on YouTube. Can you put a link to that in the chat, bro? I'll send it to you.
Yeah, right now.
And this documentary that I did on Dr. King, I did it, I think, in 2018 or 2016. And it's got about 250,000 views. At least it did. It might have increased since then. But I'm going to send you a copy of it because I want to do a similar documentary, full documentary related to, it's got 267,000 views. Again, this thing is 6 years old, but I put a lot of time in it. And topics like this take a lot of time. I mean, they just do. You know what I'm saying? Like you can see, we're going through this. I mean, I've only covered half the leadership. I haven't even covered all the leadership of the Black Panther Party. And look, it's taken 3 series to do so. So let me wrap this up. All right, so here's the documents I want to just show to the people out here. Listen, this is a COINTELPRO document. COINTELPRO stands for Counterintelligence Program, COINTELPRO. Hope I'm saying that clearly and right enough, but COINTELPRO. All right. So this was the federal government's, FBI's program to counter Black revolutionary movements, people, and organizations in the 1960s, 70s, and I believe beyond. I think the program kept going. In fact, in Johnny Cochran's book, which we covered in part 1, he says that the program didn't end. He talks about the idea that it's called the Ghetto Informant Program. He says it's alive and well. It hasn't ended from his perspective, and that was in 1971. But anyway, back to this document. So the government in this memo to its field agents shows all the major cities, right? You see Cleveland right there, right, bro? They even got Buffalo on there. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
They wasn't playing in terms of what they wanted to do. And the Black Panther Party was growing in all these major cities. So put yourself in 1967, 68. Remember, they started in 66. Put yourself back there and say, look at an organization that never existed where Black people are carrying guns, saying we are going to literally have armed conflict with the authorities, with the police, if they don't give us our rights. And imagine the growth of that organization. It's not like Black Lives Matter. Ain't nobody was walking around, hands up, don't shoot. You know, and I'm not putting down Black Lives Matter if you were part of that. That's another conversation for another day. But they had assault rifles in every major city. ready to put in work against the police. Think for a minute. And they're growing, right? They got a uniform and everything, a mantra, all of that, Black Power. All right, so now look, in this document, the director of the CIA, or director of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, he says, look, we got 4 goals. 1, to prevent the coalition of militant nationalist groups, et cetera, et cetera. Again, we talked about this in part 2. There has never been a government plan or program to go against any group of people in the country other than Black people. I mean, I really sincerely want y'all to think about that. You never see no documents against Italians, against Germans, against Irish, against Jews. They have an FBI policy document saying we cannot let these Negroes get unified. That's the number 1 goal. Number 2, prevent the rise of a Black Messiah. I won't go into detail. You can read it yourself. You can find it on the internet. Man, I spelled that wrong. Bad, didn't I? Okay. It's an E, not an A. All right. Prevent violence on the part of Black national groups and prevent militant nationalist groups, leaders from gaining respectability. So these are their 4 goals right here in this document. All right. And then they go down to targets. Now, here was what's very interesting. I want y'all to pay close attention to this. Targeted organizations in this document are the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. That's the group that H. Rap Brown belonged to. Now, this is before the Black Panther Party. I want y'all to look at this. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference. This is the group ran by Dr. King. The Revolutionary Action Movement. I ain't never even heard of them before. Never. Random. And then, of course, the Nation of Islam. All right. Why am I showing you this document? Because this document was mailed out or sent out on February 29th, 1968. Okay? So in the early parts of 68. What did we talk about with the Black Panther Party? They were created in 1966. And J. Edgar Hoover, in a memo to every single office of the FBI around the country, says that the Black Panther, he don't even mention the Black Panthers. He says that these 4 groups are the target and they're the most violent. Let that sink in, because I can't show you not one image, and you can't find an image where Dr. King is holding a weapon, where the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee is holding a weapon. Hell, it's in the name. Nonviolent. Right? RAM, again, I ain't never heard of them. And the Nation of Islam are not holding weapons. In 1968, there's one organization that got national press coverage, though. And they did have weapons. And they were violent to the degree that they were willing to pick up arms. And that group was the Black Panther Party. Why? Why is the FBI not mentioning a group that had formed 2 years earlier and was growing rapidly around the country? This is the crust of my argument. This is the apex of my position, and I will hold it until I get some information that shows me otherwise. This document is talking about Black organizations and the threat that they are to the national security of the country. And it does not mention the Black Panther Party 2 years after their formation. And my conclusion is simple. I said it when I first did this video several years ago, and I'm saying it now. They did not want to disturb a group that the FBI, the CIA, or whoever, was developing to draw out all the Black leadership in the country so that they can individually pick them off one by one once they became affiliated with this group. Now, if you think that's a stretch, I want you to watch this video. And this video was done recently. based on what I just said and what you're about to see, we're going to wrap it up with this last video, bro. And you tell me if I make a valid point or not. If I'm wrong, cool. But I think that this will, what they say, put the cherry on top. This will like really cross the T and dot the I. Here we go. Watch this video, y'all.
The Black Panther Party spread quickly, partly because young African Americans across the country had similar experiences with the police.
We would get calls from Atlanta, Nashville, Raleigh, North Carolina, from Washington, D.C., Bridgeport, Connecticut. Every city, small or large, you can think of, wanted a chapter of the Black Panther Party.
There's no question that the Panthers were provocative, but there's also no question that law enforcement exaggerated the threat they posed and overreacted.
Do you feel the nation is in trouble?
I think very definitely it is.
What is the answer?
The answer is vigorous law enforcement.
That's the only answer.
That's the only answer.
How about justice? You hear a lot about justice with law enforcement.
Justice is merely incidental to law and order.
FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover today asserted that the Black Panthers represent the greatest internal threat to the nation. Hoover said the Panthers have perpetrated numerous assaults on police and have engaged in violent confrontations throughout the country.
When Hoover identified the Black Panther Party as the #1 threat to the national security of the United States at a time when they're fighting in Vietnam, of course that was crazy, but it was politically very effective. And it says to law enforcement at the local level, we can take the gloves off now.
Take the gloves off now.
Civil liberties. We can go after them with everything we got.
Police say there was sniper fire throughout the early morning hours, so they moved in cautiously.
Police
and
and
then
Black
began
Panthers clash in Houston, New Orleans, and other cities.
The Black Panther police
In the pre-dawn hours in Chicago today, police and Negroes fought a pitched battle.
Obviously, we are nowhere near this today.
All right, that's it, bro. But here's the point. I'm done with the slide altogether. Here's the point, bro. That video shows two major things, two major points. One, it was not until 1969 that Hoover said that the Black Panther Party represented a threat. So he waited 3 years after their formation to call this group the greatest internal threat, right, in the country. So they had 3 years to grow, to build, to develop, to draw out. But once he dropped the hammer, boom, this is the target. Every police department in the country had the green light. You saw what the guy said. They had permission to take the gloves off. And they literally was having shootouts on a regular basis with Black Panther Party headquarters and offices all over the country. I mean, that was it. That was like, we got him now. And man, to me, it was a setup. It was a trap. And I think that this New York Times video kind of said it, but didn't say it because they didn't give the full, scope of the history like we did tonight. But there's a history there. So that's it, bro. I know we went late. It's 9:17, hour and a half in. Thank you, man.
Man, you dropped it again, brother. I put the link out just in case we got any questions, comments from anybody real quick, which probably not, man. You definitely opened my eyes up to a few more things that I didn't know. So I got some research to do myself.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
Dope, man. Dope. Come on, y'all. Any questions, comments, or observations for the brother? Hey, man, what's up, though? Any more besides them last two? Is there anybody else?
As far as people we can talk about that was in the party? Man, we haven't even touched Fred Hampton. We haven't touched Geronimo Pratt, which I think two very key figures that we can deal with for probably a half an hour, 45 minutes each.
Yeah, man, we should do it, bro.
It's just a lot. It's a lot to go through, man. I mean, There was a lot of leadership in that group. So,
well, if you up for it, man, we can definitely do it, man.
I think I want to do something more current, man. We got to really, and I'm not saying that this is not valid, but there's a lot going on right now in terms of, just politics in our community and all that. So I got some topics in mind, and I'm gonna run them by you, offline, and we can go there. But I think we got some information we can definitely discuss. But the video didn't do bad, right? Part 2 didn't do bad. I was looking at the stats.
Not at all, brother.
Yeah. So, thank you again for the opportunity, man.
All right, man. We're gonna close this out then, man. Peace and have a good night, bro.
All right, man. Take care. Salute.
Mike Scott in the building, y'all. I'm gonna drop that link again for y'all to subscribe to the brother if you haven't over at the Scott Report.